One. Hey, how elections, voting, and tech intersect. That's what this episode's about. For most of the Western world, we take it for granted that we have the right to participate in civic life. And when we talk about voting and what we used to vote with, it's often in the context of political life. And lately, that's been hard to ignore. For better or worse, the US presidential election looms large around the world. It's now less than 2 weeks away and is seen as an existential referendum on nearly 80 years of Pax Americana. Attacks on the means that enable voting and counting at scale undermines the trust that everyday people extend to these systems and the people using them to deliver valid, truthful results. That's the extreme we live with today. But there are less extreme ways to look at what election tech offers. When we elect, we make a choice. Voting is what we do to share the choice by some action. We vote in many ways. We take polls about your least favorite haircut. We swipe right to let someone know we find them attractive. We click the thumb on Reddit to let the poster know we agree on their thread. We raise our hands to show favor on a proposal. When we vote, we share sentiment, affirm a decision, choose an outcome, or decide a direction. Voting allows the next step to happen. In this episode of This Week in MeteorJS, we'll delve into this and the role software plays in collecting, arranging, and preparing information to enable you to vote. As a matter of fact, you're going to have a chance to cast your vote today live and watch the results come in. But before we get there, you can practice voting. Give it a go. Go and hit that like button. Your like vote tells YouTube, share this episode with more viewers. That's the other part software plays. In taking your ballot, recording your vote, tallying the results, and sharing them. Küster will walk you through the software, show you how it's built, and will suggest ways you can extend it to really make it your own. Hopefully, you'll share your ideas with us live too. To animate this further, we also have with us, and you may see him here, a real live US politician, fresh off his first campaign, still reddened, but with a product attack plan. Some of you know him. He's a blast from the Meteor New York meetups past. You're watching episode 60. I'm Alim Gafar, one of the hosts of This Week in MeteorJS, a weekly newscast of the MeteorJS Dispatches podcast, streaming to you live from New York City.
Hello, and again, this time, Jan Küster from Germany is here. Hello, hello.
And the gentleman below, we're keeping a secret right now. We'll get to him. Oh, you can actually read his name. But
This is Tom Goldenberg. I'm the CEO of Victory Waves. We offer AI-powered political campaign software.
Typically, we jump right into the news. But before that, I have something to say about last week's episode. Episode 59, you might have seen, is missing. You're not going crazy. We had some challenges executing the episode as planned and decided that in the state it was recorded, it didn't represent what we hoped to do. You should expect to see the Change Streams episode as envisioned in the next 10 days. It will not be live streamed. Rather, we'll just post it as a recording. And now, turn it over to the news. Küster.
So, as many of you know, there is this annual voting happening on the web development community, and that is State of JavaScript or State of JS. And by the time there were more and more new versions of this survey because it became so popular. And among them, there is now the State of React 2024 survey online. And I'm sharing it quickly with my screen, Alim, then you can just preview it a little bit to the people, but it's mostly known for most of the people. You have the survey, you can answer questions about your knowledge on React. And while you're doing that, you can also mark many topics as interesting to read. And then it gives you back a reading composition at the end. And it also shows you a knowledge score. And I suggest everyone to take it. There are new things in React I personally didn't know, and more of these things. And if you're like me, very concerned about this direction of this server-side components, then use the survey to express your opinion on that topic.
Is there anything else?
Right now, no. So we were looking into if there were any significant news on the Meteor development this week, but we found nothing that significant. So we leave it out for now and go into Meteor later on with our section on understanding Meteor.
And hey, Küster, what should they do?
So once you started voting for the state of React, then you can also cast your vote on our, what's the name of, on our channel, on us. So when you're voting for us in terms of subscribing, then you will also get something back, because you will get notified when the next episode is coming up, and you also support us bubbling up in the YouTube algorithm, but also work towards more features and hopefully giving that back to you.
Yeah. We're trying to get to the partner program. So we're at, I think, 303 subscribers right now. And thanks to all the work that you guys have done to get us there, we very much appreciate it. And if we can keep that momentum going, and for those of you who come here on a weekly basis or drop in from time to time and enjoy what you're seeing, hit the subscribe button and come along for the ride with the rest of the team. Okay. And with that, I'm going to get right into our feature segment. We are talking about election tech today. We are talking about elections. And, for the past 4 years, I've been an election official in New York City. I've had more than 25 years in civic life and about 20 years working on elections on and off. And so this topic is really, near to me. And we're in the election season in New York right now. We're in the United States. And I recently had to recertify as an election official, and I did so this week. And also this week on Monday, I was myself elected to a new position on a board, on a corporate board that I belong to. And, that made me think a little bit more about the concept of elections and what it involves and all of these things. Now, that election, the corporate board, it's for a regional youth sailing organization, involves parliamentary rules, a directed script, and the method that they use to do it is raising hands. There really is no software or technology that's involved other than a Zoom call to let people that weren't able to make it in person participate. But other than that, it's the simplest way to participate by voting. Just raise your hand and have it counted. Somebody just, reaches out there and counts. But, my first, so that's one way that works. My first political experience involved examining ballots back in 2002. And ballots are the way that large elections typically happen for a campaign that I worked on. And back then, the technology that they used at the time was mechanical. You pulled a lever, you made your choices, you flipped some switches, pulled a lever, and it made some holes in a piece of paper. And that paper was then recorded as your vote. And so that was my first experience, was actually going and challenging some of those. And that also affected the 2000 election in the United States. And it's around then they realized that, maybe we could do better. And electronic voting first appears in sort of the mainstream around after the 2000 election, with the deployment of the Diebold machines in response to those issues with those mechanical perforations that didn't quite make it all the way through. They call them hanging chats. And if you were around during that time, you might have heard the term. That's what they're talking about. And those mechanical devices started getting phased out. Now, since there was really one political party that was involved in these first contracts, the machines weren't trusted, and they were later modified to include safeguards such as paper audits and network isolation, meaning that the machines themselves are not connected to the internet. That, by the way, happens to be part of the disinformation that happens across the United States today with regard to these voting machines. They are not connected to the internet, and I don't know where people come up with the idea. I can attest to additional trust and physical safeguards to these machines, ballots, and the data, but I can really only speak to what goes on in the 5 boroughs of New York City. And I think you'll understand a little more when I explain how voting works in the US. Beside the fear of vendor shenanigans, rigging elections in favor of one candidate for another, there's also the real chance that random electrical activity could end up miscounting votes. Now this, believe it or not, is a thing. It happened. It actually happened on May 18, 2003. It's one of the first earliest accounts of full computerized voting. And it happened in, and I'm going to mispronounce this now, but I think it's pronounced Serbik, a district in the city of Brussels in Belgium. Do you know this part of Brussels, Küster? Okay. Well, the story goes that there was a local Communist Party candidate. Her name is Maria Vindevogel. She wasn't really well known, but she received like an impossibly high number of votes from one polling station. And that number was considered impossible because the number was larger than there were voters, right? There weren't as many voters as there were votes. So the immediate reaction everybody had was, well, this is fraud. Somebody must have tampered with the machine. And so they counted the votes. And when they counted the votes, they found out that she had received 4,096 more votes than could be explained. Now, for most people with computer science background, 4,096 is a very precise number. In binary, it's represented by 2 to the 12th power, right? And this is how chips read information. And so the consensus of the experts after a very, very long process was that the anomaly was caused by a bit flip. The story is really well told in the May 8th, 2019 episode of Radiolab. It was titled, can you guys guess what the title was? No? Anybody in the audience? It was titled Bit Flip. And they spend some time, they really spend quality time investigating the story and reporting on it. It's a wild retelling of chasing down one dead-end hypothesis after another to finally find the problem adjacently for a condition they couldn't reproduce. So it's one of those things where you can't reproduce it, you can't reproduce the bug. You have to find other ways by looking sideways to see if you can get the information. Anyway, I won't keep you guys in suspense anymore. The solution the tech election folks came up with was to just recount the totals and then compare the first total they got with the second total and see if there was a match for its validity. And they just do that automatically. And this is how they overcome the issue of these potential bit flips. But the point really here is that sometimes the problem is with the machine or the software or even the environment that you're in. Now, later in the 2000s, other manufacturers started appearing and competing for contracts. Among them are Smartmatic and Dominion Voting Systems. And in 2020, they become the target of conspiracy theories. That they are actively moving votes from one candidate to another. Now, it could also be that people, create these problems by doing things. Remember, at Serbik, the first thought was that it was fraud. And it seems that when something unusual and unexpected happens like this in highly contested elections, that's the first place people's minds turn. That's what they suspect. I'm not going to get into how many ways this whole thing is bonkers. that could be its own show in itself. But we're here to talk about how software can be used to help drive decisions and elections. And rather than dive down into the conspiracy theory rabbit hole, let's instead look at what companies are doing in the real world to propel candidates forward and get voters to the poll. So here's what we're going to cover. Since this has been so US-centric, let's make sure we're on the same page. First, we'll put the political voting in historical and global context. And then we'll describe in a little more detail how it works in the United States. You'll see that it's actually a little more complicated than you might expect if you're from the outside. Even actually within the inside of the United States, sometimes people think that the way people vote in one area is very much the same as another. And you'll see it's not that, even with the simplifications we're going to make here. And after that, we're going to run an election right here. And Mr. Küster is going to be the guy he's our poll official. He's going to make it happen. And afterwards, we're going to bring in our guest, who's going to share his experience building and running a campaign for political office. He'll also show us what he's building in order to help others who aspire to public office. Küster will then walk through the application you just used to help you understand how it's built. And then we'll discuss the app and brainstorm ways you could take that repo and make it your own. Finally, we'll recap what we've covered and wrap up the episode. All right? Okay, so let's get with it. First item, voting's historic and global context. It's been said that the act of citizens casting votes for elective purposes began in ancient Athens. Actually, there's some proof that it might have been even ancient Sparta, but we're not going to get there right now. For all intents and purposes, we'll just work with this. Back then, the landed citizenry were the people that were enfranchised. They had the right to vote. And they used it, oddly enough, for backwards voting. Now, what's backwards voting? Backwards voting is instead of electing someone for something that you want them to do or be, you vote them out. And in this case, you're voting people out of Athens. So if you got lots and lots of votes, they didn't like you. If you got more than 6,000 votes, you were out. No more Athens for you. So that's what the early voting in Athens was like. And I feel like we should bring that back. I think it could, be something that works better. Instead of electing people for office, we say, no, we'll make sure that whoever gets the most votes doesn't get that seat. I think that could be something. So the Smithsonian Magazine had a really nice, interesting background on this. I thought it was pretty cool. And anyway, let me carry on. So, this evolves over time. The Romans take it up and so on. And then the 13th century, the mercantile class in Venice introduced a thing called approval voting. And it's where people within the guild were entitled to a single vote, but they could only be cast in the affirmative. So now we have a little variation on it. So there's only one type of vote. And if you've been on a corporate board, you'll know that oftentimes this affirmative voting is the only kind of voting. You get one slate of candidates, and then you either don't vote or you vote for them. And 9 times out of 10, those candidates get elected to the board. That's just how it was. It doesn't sound very democratic, but that's not the point. The United States appeared more recently and endowed citizens with the right to vote in 1787. Now, it was imperfectly constructed at the time. It included, the ability to, well, let's not go there. But it wasn't until the passage of the 15th Amendment nearly 100 years later in 1870 that former slaves were enfranchised. However, it took the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to remove most of the impediments for them exercising those rights. So, how does political voting work in the United States? Well, how does it work generally speaking around the world? A few years back, the Pew Research Center published an explainer on how countries around the world conducted elections. And we'll have a link to the article so that you could read it. But 2 things stand out in that. Most of the countries in the world use paper ballots, and about a quarter of them used postal ballots. Now, postal ballots is using the postal system as a way to deliver or transmit the ballots once somebody's casted their vote. So paper, which is pretty old, right? And postal service. Again, two things. How does it work in the United States? Well, in the United States, every 4 years, we have a national election to decide who's going to be president. We have every 2 years other elections for congressional seats and so on. But we basically have 4 different voting district type elections that go on in the United States. We don't really have a single countrywide election system, a federal system of voting district. It's done at 4 primary areas. There is statewide voting, which covers elections for state executive positions, some judicial offices, the United States Senate, the Vice President, and the President of the United States in all 50 states and territories of the United States. Those folks that are elected as representatives from the territories to the Senate and the District of Columbia are non-voting representatives in Congress. So they get to have a voice, but they don't get a vote. In the congressional districts, which are people from the House of Representatives, the lesser part or the junior part of the Congress, it covers the elections for the local representatives to the House of Representatives. Now, each state has several of these, whereas the senators are limited to only 2 for each state that we have. And again, as I said before, if it's coming from the territories, you get a representative, but they don't get to actually, cast a vote. Then there's Senate legislative voting, which covers elections for state senates and assembly districts. The maps for these districts are distinct from the congressional district maps, and in some cases, there's some confusing overlap among the two. But some judicial offices are also covered by these elections. And finally, there's the local district voting, which covers elections for cities, counties, boroughs, towns, villages, and includes local ombudsmen, school boards, county supervisors and executives, local or district attorneys, judges, and mayors. Which is to say, the perception that people have of elections in America is often flawed. Even citizens here don't appreciate the variety and number of voting districts in the United States, which, by the way, the U.S. Census Bureau has estimated to be about 170,000. So we think about this one country during this election period. We think about this unified thing, but there are exactly about 170,000 individual elections going on around the country. So it's pretty massive and pretty complicated. A great resource to find election dates and deadlines is the U.S. Vote Foundation. We'll post all of these. I apologize that we aren't able to put up, graphics in the background. Storytel is really great at this. I am not. So, you'll just have to imagine a little bit as we go through this. All right, so now we have some civics knowledge, and we've talked about how election tech works. How about we actually use it? So, Küster, can you show us?
Definitely, I can show us. Let me first paste the link into the chat, because this is what we're all going to go to. And I also posted into the Slack so that everybody got the vote. And I'm also posting it to us, so even Tom can vote with us as well. So when you're opening the app, Alim, I'm sharing my screen in a minute, and you can show the app. When you see the app, before you just click anything, you should make sure that you've actually clicked, that you will have to know you can only vote once, like in the real life. So make sure you know what to do. It's like in a real election, right? You have to know what you're going to vote. And since this is a secret vote, nobody knows who is voting what. The only thing you can do is you can select one of these tags here, and when you click on them, then there is your button vote for it, and when you voted for it, then it's voted for, and then you can't vote again.
Yeah, I think the last minute change you made is not registering, because I clicked And I'm sure other people are clicking right now, but it's not. Oh, it's finally coming up. What's going on?
Oh, maybe it took maybe a second for the database to show up. So
Okay, all right.
now we see the live votes come in. So this is definitely, let me reshare my screen, sorry. Maybe I forgot to tell you that, yes, this is a live voting. So when you see the votes of other people coming in, then you didn't see who voted for what, but you saw that somebody voted and you see the leaderboard, because that's how it
Yeah.
works.
The problem, though, is that if you click to vote and the database wasn't active, it records you as voted, and so you're going to have to figure out how to hack it.
Whoa.
Like I
Okay.
just
So
did.
here's another thing. So because this, we were talking about voting fraud and these things, and this app is actually hackable. So you can find out how to hack this app to cast infinite votes. I will not tell you, but you can find out, and they're saved in the database. So we will go into this in deep later in the Understanding Meteor section. And until that, I'd like to everyone count for their votes. Vote for their tech, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Tom, were you able to vote for yours?
Yeah, I think I figured out how to hack it too.
Good.
But I didn't pursue that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody wants Angular, huh?
Yeah, let's keep waiting a bit, and later we will get back to our vote and see how that goes.
Mm.
Oh my goodness.
People still love Blaze, huh?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Blaze. Blaze is on fire.
It's hot.
Oh, by the way, you have to get it back. It's off the screen right now. So why don't we? Can you pull it back up, Jan?
Oh, I thought we are going to continue with our program and get back to the app later on.
Well, I think people like seeing because we said to them that they get to see their results as they go. So I want them to see it for now, right? Give them a few minutes, and we can go on in a minute there. All right, so we've got that. Okay, and we're seeing some live updates right now on the screen, right, which is great. All right, so anybody else that's watching that wants to click on that and register their vote, please do so.
Yeah, Fred already found one way to cheat, but that's only one way, because you still could theoretically infinitely cast a vote. So maybe you find that out as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see how people break it, but that's going to be part of like the conversation a little later. All right. Well, awesome, Jan. So thank you. And I just want to introduce our guest. Is fresh from his first political campaign. Tom Goldenberg was the recent candidate for mayor of New Haven, Connecticut. He got a start building apps with MeteorJS. He was a featured speaker at 2016's Meteor Camp at the United Nations and a LinkedIn top voice for the popularity of his writing. Tom is here to share his experience running for office and what role, if any, software played in it. And he'll tell us what he learned along the way that informs the apps his company Victory Waves is now building to help other candidates run their campaigns. So, Tom, how you doing?
Great to be here, Alim. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Now,
And,
do you need me to...
what I would say is, I got my start in the Meteor community and in software engineering, working for startups. And so I think that experience raised my expectations of what I thought I would see when I ran for office and the technology tools that I thought would be available. And so I like to talk about, you know, this spectrum of different industries are at different levels of maturity in software.
Sure.
You know, you've got consumer software like Facebook and Instagram that's very sophisticated. At the low end, you've got government software, which if you've experienced can be quite bad. And I was surprised. I found that election technology is a lot closer to government than to you know, Instagram and Facebook and some of our sophisticated you know, apps.
Yeah, I called the section that we put for you Soviet era campaign tech and why modern candidates need a victory wave.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of legacy.
Is that accurate? Is that accurate?
It's very interesting, right? And Alim, you're a historian on a lot of this stuff. So you know, a lot of the technology used for campaigning, we're going to be talking about campaigns, not necessarily the voting, really everything before voting. A lot of it's kind of legacy software from really like 20 or so years ago. I think it was Howard Dean and his campaign that spun off this voter activation network.
Okay.
And that was, you know, what year was that, Alim? It's like the early 2000s.
I think that was 2000.
Yeah. So that kind of spawned some kind of voter outreach efforts and get out the vote. And that company is still around. They joined with another company. It's now called NGP Van, and they've become kind of like the almost like a monopoly around on the Democratic side for voter mobilization, canvassing, stuff like that. And so I kind of identified when I ran that because it's been in this position of a monopoly, it's really failed to innovate over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do with Victory Waves is kind of push the bar up, right? Like, so, you know, all the trends we see in AI and usability and everything like that, we want to move the technology for campaigning so that anyone can do it, not just the well-funded candidates, but, you know, anyone who's passionate about an issue and wants to get in. They shouldn't be prevented because they don't have the technology know-how. And that's unfortunately what I saw.
So the demo that you're going to show us, I think, what's the pain point? The pain point is when you get like your list of the voter roll, it's really large, right? And trying to filter and search through it, you need some skills.
Well, like look at, you know, I mean, there's different sizes, of course, for this, but you know, we're working with a candidate in New York City where you have almost 5 million, you know, 4.5 million registered voters.
Yeah.
That's not something that you can easily do stuff in an Excel spreadsheet. And, you know, there's a need for data. And then with that data also to, you know, prioritize, you know, you got to know like, hey, I want to go to this neighborhood. That's kind of the strategy piece of political strategy. I want to, you know, build my base here. I want to reach out to these groups. And the current technology for that is extremely cumbersome. So one of the things that we do is, you know, you should just be able to say what your strategy is. I want to reach out to voters in this neighborhood or this age, or this demographic, and we're going to prepare that for you just behind the scenes automatically. So right. So this is like on our, you know, front page of our website. You can see like who's actually likely to donate to my campaign, or with your social media, like who's engaging with your content on social media, or you know, you people who sign your petition. This is another huge pain point where in most cities and states you have to collect well over 1,000, sometimes several thousand signatures. And there's no technology to help you with that process.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to be able to do as well.
So it sounds like if you're not like a SQL expert, like writing those kinds of queries, like those natural language queries in SQL, is a skill that you have to bring to the table. And most of the people that are working on the campaign don't have those skills.
Well, and look, if you got a lot of money, if
Mhm.
you're in a campaign where you have more than $1 million, you can
Mhm.
hire someone to do that,
Sure.
right? And so I think that's why that it hasn't really been addressed,
Mhm.
is because what the congressional campaigns and the gubernatorial campaigns, they'll hire a data analyst to do all this stuff. But
Okay.
if you are, running, like you said, for your state assembly,
Yeah.
even if you're running for state senate or you're running for mayor, but it's not a top 100 city,
Yeah.
you're going to be financially stretched. You can't afford $5,000 a month for someone to crunch numbers for you. So
Right.
we want to enable those candidates that maybe they don't have the backing of the political establishment, or they don't have a huge amount of fundraising resources, but we can work with them and get them on the ballot and help them to raise money.
It's pretty cool. So are you building your applications with JavaScript?
We are full stack JavaScript,
Okay.
Node.js, React.js. So I did vote for React in the vote, but I only voted once.
And how about
and we're expanding our team. So
okay.
we're very early stages, but we have customers and revenue. And I encourage anyone watching this that wants to get involved, shoot me an email. I'm at tom@victorywaves.com.
All right, and we'll put that in the show notes later on too. So if you guys want to reach out and help out with that and get some experience building apps that are going to get real use, then that's something. So you said that you have a customer in New York City. That's what they're running for.
We are working with a candidate for the comptroller office.
Okay.
And New York City is really interesting. In the United States, I don't know how prevalent this is I think there's just a lot less money in politics in the rest of the world.
Mhm.
In the US, there's a lot of money. And so what New York City has done, which is very interesting, is they provide a public financing.
Yeah.
So, we see this in some states in the United States. It makes it a lot, like I said, it makes it a lot easier if you don't have big pockets or you're not part of the current establishment to still go and have your voice heard. So
Yeah.
we're very fortunate that New York City does offer that to candidates, and that helps.
They do like a 6-to-1 match or something like that, if I remember
It's
correctly.
actually 8.
It's 8-to-1. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very nice. So somebody donates $1, they'll give you $8.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, you give $100, it becomes 900.
Yeah.
So it's been we started working with a congressional campaign.
Mhm.
We've done a couple of state assembly races. And so New York City, it's a great experience for our tech to scale to that, millions of voters, which is exciting.
So Tom's talking about like his app is all the stuff before the voters get to the polling booth. We have the polling booth here today. Küster built one for us, right? And so what we're going to do now is we're going to transition over and we're going to get back to that little poll booth. You want to, I guess, bring it back up so that we can kind of maintain the context for a moment, right? Let people remember what it is that they were working with. And then you're gonna show them behind the scenes, correct?
This is correct. So let's first dive in what we have here as our intermediate results. So it looks like the Blaze team Blaze is currently winning.
Yay!
but the vote is not closed yet.
I'm so
if you're
surprised.
Team React, then you might want to find that little trick to manipulate this voting. And I can assure you there is one more way to infinitely vote here. I will not tell you yet, but I will show you a little bit about the code now. So you may remember some of you might remember at least the leaderboard app from Meteor.com. And if you're not, let me quickly share it to you. So there is on GitHub, there is this leaderboard example. It's an example app. It's actually 10 years old. So this is really, really first stage Meteor app level. And we looked at it and we decided, hey, let's do it. They used scientists, and you could vote in a 5-point step for these scientists. And I was thinking, yeah, that's great. I love scientists. I'm working at the university myself. I'm working in science, so that's awesome. But I was thinking, but for our stream, let's make it a little bit more Meteor-like and use some of the front ends, because nowadays Meteor supports these kinds of front ends, and there's always this little discussion which is the most favorable one around. And I cloned this app and just looked at it. So first of all, this is Meteor 3. I updated it to Meteor 3. There was not much to do about it. And it's basically 2 files here. So you have the leaderboard HTML and the leaderboard JS file. So this is nothing complex. And this leaderboard HTML, it's a Blaze app. It contains a little head with only loading a custom font. So Google knows now what we're voting, basically. So they know even more than we do know about this vote. But yeah, that's in the head. and then there is a little body with minimal information. So it's all on one page. As you can see, there's this leaderboard template. And let me show the website again in, whoa, sorry. It was opening the link on the wrong window. So when you're on this leaderboard app, you can see that's, sorry.
That's okay.
That happens sometimes. So this here, this each players, that's basically iterating these lists here, and then for each.
No, I'm just talking to myself. Sorry, guys. Svelte is just like blowing up. So.
Oh yeah, somebody found the trick, I think. Somebody found the trick. That's great. So and it's simply iterating these. It's still called players. That's from the original leaderboard. I don't know what they used before. Maybe it was like football players or something. And then for each of them, I just updated this a little bit. So if you have voted, then it shows you this message: thank you for your vote. And otherwise, if you selected a name, then you can vote for it. That's what you've seen. Or it shows you, and if there was an error, there is an error message, but yeah, it never happened, fortunately. And now here is this JS code for that. It's all in one page. This is this classic Meteor setup from 2014. Everything is in one page, and you use Meteor if Meteor is client and if Meteor is server. So I was thinking, let's keep it that way and see if it still works that way in 2024. And it's working quite nice. So we have our MongoDB collection, which is created on server and client, because it's outside of this Meteor is client, basically. And I'm subscribing to a publication immediately here when the client starts. And that's basically the which caused the app to be a little bit slow in starting when Alim wanted to vote and didn't see any changes because the publication wasn't ready yet. And then I'm checking from local storage if somebody voted. Tingy. Do you hear what I'm saying? and then set this into a reactive variable. That's the session. By the way, this is Understanding Meteor, Alim. Where is the banner?
Understanding Meteor.
Yes.
Okay.
And the this is basically the template, and this, if you can vote, is basically here coming from our session. And also, if you selected a name, this was that was what you put into the session using this event here. And the event itself is also blocked if you have voted already, and it's also setting voted to true if the server responded without an error. So that's basically how it's working. So maybe somebody already found out the way to infinitely vote. I will check in a minute on the board. And to get to the server side of things, this is simply here on startup, populating the database with these technologies, React, Vue, Blaze, Svelte, Solid, Angular, other, and then it's inserting them. This is our publication. Simply return everything to the client because this is a small app. We can just send anything. And then there are two methods. And by the way, there is another secret method I'm not talking about yet, but maybe you see it on the screen. Here is the method to increase your vote, and that's simply updating the collection async because we are on Meteor 3. So that's our voting app. That's it. That's not big. And I will push this to my own GitHub account and make it free so people can use it as a starting point for further investigation. And you can use this app, you can clone it, then you can modify it, and you can create a free tier on Galaxy and then publish it and try it out. And if this works for you and you want to get serious, you can use a paid tier on Galaxy, like start with the tiny tier and then go up. The more your app grows, you can grow on your own. And the good thing is, if you use our Dispatches 60 coupon, then you can get $60 credits for free to start your business. So I think this is a good offer, is it?
I think it's a very good offer. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna step over us for a minute and just let the video play that shows the offer and shows Galaxy, and then it's going to show the landing page and where you could put that coupon code. You can see where it's circled right now. You drop that in there, fill out the rest of the information. If you haven't used it already, you will get that $60 credit, and it's good to go.
And now we're back at our leaderboard, and it looks like Svelte is still keeping the race. So kudos to those whoever found out how to raise up the numbers.
It's it's not bad. It's not bad. All right, so thank you so much for showing this. This is pretty awesome stuff. And let me just switch back for a second. Where am I? I'm all over the place, and I'm not seeing where I've got to be. Okay, so that's all really cool. And so now we're going to just chat a little bit among ourselves, and maybe you could chat too in the chat and give us some ideas about how we could take this application and where we can take it. What else can we do with it? Should we just leave it up here and let it run in case people want to keep on adding to it? Or do we want to take it down? How do you want to do this?
I would go into Jan's comments first, who says trick is rather euphemistic for something that obvious, but as far as I can see, there is still no one abusing that trick. So for me, this is still a trick until it became so obvious that everybody uses it.
Yeah. So, I've already thought about a few ways that you could expand on this. For instance, you could take this and you could rewrite it for a different front end. So, the front ends that you're voting on right now, take this app, and instead of having it in Blaze, rewrite it in Svelte or in React or Vue. I'm surprised that nobody's put in Solid. I thought Fred would have put in for Solid. I thought he was a Solid fan, but I'm not seeing it there.
It's also interesting to see that Vue is very low. So I'm working on another project with Vue, and it's actually awesome. I mean, you have the same amount of drop-in component. There is a use Vue, which is basically a collection of use blah 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 pattern, common pattern, common use cases, and it's if you come from Blaze like me, it's much more intuitive like than React, because it's more templating oriented than these deterministic views in React, where you have a much more integrated JS and an HTML view. And I don't know why it's not so strong in the Meteor community. I can't tell.
I don't know, and it's written by Evan Yu, right? Who is from the Meteor communities, right? So, one would think, but people like what they like. I mean, one of the other things you can consider doing is like switch out the data layer. Use Apollo, or maybe even swap out and try FerretDB, or one of the other things you could do is you could stick in just a total votes cast as an option, so you keep a global count on all the votes that are casted, so you can kind of like do that too. It's another way that you could do it. Or I have some other ideas, like you could give each person that is voting could have, like, let's say 5 votes, and you can decide to use those 5 votes any way you want. You can give 3 to Svelte, 1 to Blaze, and maybe 2 to Angular. You know what I mean? And like, there's so many different things I think you could take this little starter app and do something very interesting with, and make it unique. The other thing, I think, one of the things I would love to see, because this is almost like ranked voting right now. The only problem is there's really no way to determine, like, that you have to kind of like manually figure it out. But you could add highlighting for that. Rank choice voting.
It's also, of course, it's also problematic that since people can vote twice, you don't really get good analytics here. I don't know who is counting up for Svelte, but it looks like the fan base is very strong in that person.
Wow. So the other thing too is you can like create accountability by adding like the accounts package, right?
Oh, no, it's getting up.
Oh my gosh. Look at that.
So usually if I build such an app, I would have people sign up with an identifier that's actually a little bit more trustable, like email or something. I mean, of course, we all know you can create 20,000 email accounts, but it's just it's one step ahead of what we have here right now.
It's a little more friction than that. Yeah.
The
other thing I think is really cool, like, is if you don't want to use like front ends, but let's say, for instance, you are let's pretend you're part of an open source project where you have to maintain community code, and people are constantly like asking you to do things, and you have to create priorities about what you're going to build, and people are saying, well, this is really, really important. One of the things you can do is say, okay, well, here, create that feature, and then here is I pledge this amount of money, and you can use that as a voting, calculator, right?
Okay, because I was thinking about, like, we have this mechanism already in the in at least in regards to feature requests in the discussions on GitHub, and there we can clearly see that export fields support in package.json is a very demanded feature. And I mean, I can filter by. Can I filter by? No, I wanted to sort by voting, but it looks like I can't. Don't I just? Am I missing it here simply? That's unfair. I wanted to sort this by votings, because then you can see there are some very high in demand things reflect on the Oplog implementation. Meteor support for PostgreSQL using Oxide DB, FerretDB, and then we have content security policy. Yeah, that's a topic nobody likes. This is always a MongoDB transactions, call async alternatives. So we have some high stake topics here that people definitely want. Can I really not sort this on GitHub? Like,
You know what's going to happen is after you get off the program, you're going to find out how to do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
by
I
the
know.
way, I just want to make a correction. We were talking about Howard Dean before, Tom, and I said I think it was 2000. I looked it up. It's 2004 is when he ran for president. So that's about when you know, when the Soviet software came into being.
Well, back then it was
Oh, it was state of the art,
state of
right?
the art, yeah.
Yeah, but you know,
20 years in technology is like an ice age.
exactly.
Eon. Yeah.
I mean, look at their tanks, right? So, I just that's mean. I shouldn't say stuff like that. That's not
Okay,
nice.
I found it, Alim. That's totally crazy. It's latest sort by top all. That's sorting. Nobody ever came up. I don't
Really?
know, came up with that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And you see here, look at that. Vue 3 support was the highest demanded feature, at least in 2021. And now Vue ranks with 2 far away from the other tech. This is interesting. So the Vue people are not viewing our stream apparently.
Apparently not. Apparently not.
Oh,
All right, guys. So anyway, I think this was a lot of fun. It was interesting to me, and we got to get inside Meteor a bit and check it out. It's a great tool, I think, for getting like real-time voter information. I'm not sure that it's without putting some proper safeguards in, it would be a good application to just put out there without thinking about what are the security safeguards and what are some of the consequences in terms of duplication, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can build applications. I think we're shown that you can build real-time voting applications with Meteor, and you can do it pretty easily. So, you know, it would be kind of interesting to see where it can be taken. You know, hey Tom, I mean, you used to do some React Native development with Meteor. You know, do you think this is something that Victory Waves might use? For
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so all right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up. So we spent a little time today here talking about how well, we talked a little bit about the American election system and the fact that we have these things going on right now. We talked about how the voting system in America works, and a little bit about how it works around the world in terms of some of the technologies that we used. And we ran this application that Küster built. We guys all played with it, still playing with it as far as I could tell. You know, Svelte has got like 50 votes. Blaze has 31, React 10. I thought React would blow everything out of the water just because it's so popular, but you know, people love their tech. And we had Tom share his experiences with us about running for office, which is bloody, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
And out of that, though, he's found an opportunity where he thinks he can make a significant difference with software, with better software and better tools using technologies that are current and meaningful. And then we just did a walkthrough of what it looks like behind the scenes. And now we just had a little discussion about, you know, how you could take it and make it something different, or make it something more, or, you know, just put your own spin on it. So I hope that you guys take it, check it out once Küster puts it up, give it a try, and come back to us and share what you've done and let us see what you've done with it. I would love to see it. We'd love to actually spend an episode just going over what people build, right? And I think that'll be it for this this episode. If you're okay with it, Küster, do you want to give a reminder for our friend who's not here with us today?
Yes, so as you've realized, Storyteller is not with us, and Storyteller is currently in Japan. And he will soon be joining the Open Source Summit in Japan, giving a talk on Meteor. And if you love our stream and love the work that Jan is doing, and Jan is doing really a lot, not only on the stream, but also on his own streams, on his literary universe, but also on the Meteor community packages. So if you want to contribute to what Jan is doing, you should take a look at his GitHub sponsors page and leave him some coins so he can survive the super expansive Japan experience.
Yeah.
Come back home not totally broke.
I'm going to put that link up there. Just give me 1 second. It's sponsors, right? Okay, and let me just share that right now. So I'm going to have to stop that screen. I'm going to have to share this screen. There we go. So Jan is very good at doing these things. I'm not, but if you're interested in helping him out and help to defray some of the costs that he has while he's in Japan, I think it would be a great thing to do so. If you're able to meet with him while you're in Japan, if you are in Japan for the conference, I think he'd appreciate that too. So it's it's one of his favorite countries. He likes being there, but it's also a lot of stress. So help him out if you can. All right. And with that, I think I just want to give just let people know what's coming up next week. Next week, we're going to hear from what's been happening with Jan at the Open Source Summit. So we're going to get some news about that. And the next episode is on why we need a MeteorJS foundation. For some of you, that's not surprising that this is coming up. Some of you have seen a letter penned a couple of years ago. But for a lot of you, this is probably a shock. It's different. We're gonna get a little provocative here, and we're gonna get some fighting words in place here. Talk about why we need this thing, and we love the guys at Meteor Software, but we love Meteor more. So that's what we're looking for: is how do we make this thing survive, flourish, regardless of the company behind it. So guys, that's it for now. I have to run. I know some of you guys have to go also. Thank you, Tom, for joining us today. Really appreciate your insight and you sharing the experiences that you had. And I hope that you'll hear from somebody from our community here to help you out. I think that's how you got a job the first time that you got involved in Meteor, right? It's like you were in the community, you presented, and then somebody came and said, hey, we have an opportunity. So I think you're paying back in that way, which is really cool. Absolutely. So listen, you guys, if there's nothing else, you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again next week. Take care now. Bye.
See you.